Well, all right, gang, welcome to Uncle Voodoo's Garage. Eagle-eyed of you might notice that Bimble's missing a few items here. So what we're going to do today is install a new cam. So what we're doing is, this is what Moto Cult is calling the Paragon cam. It's their newest cam for their newest performance package, which is going to be called the Paragon Performance Package. It's going to run the Janus up to about 25 horsepower. Now, I'm not putting on the full Paragon Performance Package. I'm just using the cam. This should boost my horsepower by 2 to 3 horsepower. And that's normally something that you wouldn't bother with, you know, but I'm going to do it. Hopefully this wind isn't messing everything up. I'm going to do it because I'm already missing a couple of horsepower from the typical Stage 4 Plus kit, and that's due to my exhaust. But hopefully this cam will offset the power that I'm missing. So I should be on par with a normal Stage 4 Plus kit. And I don't think this is something that I'm going to notice in my butt dyno while riding the bike. It's not power that I'm going to feel and notice that I've made an improvement. It's mainly to help me to keep from losing speed on inclines. Is basically why I'm installing this. Now, to install this, you have to get down into the bottom end section of the engine. So the top end has been removed, and I went ahead and disassembled that off camera just to save time for the video. And as a further challenge for myself, I'm doing it with only the tools in Bimble's onboard toolkit. And so now I'm getting to a point where I can no longer proceed with the onboard toolkit. I'm going to have to pull out some specialty tools. And this is where it starts to get tricky. So this part, getting the cam in and putting the engine back together, is the more difficult part. So that's what we're going to get on film. And we've got us a whole table full of parts over here from Moto Cult. And what we're going to do is we're going to install the cam. We're going to put in a brand new 250 top end, just so you guys can see the procedure. I said when I bought this bike, I wanted it because it's easy to work on and I can do it with basic hand tools, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just putting my money where my mouth is. And we'll see how it works out. And hopefully once we get everything put back together, it fires up and runs. No problem. This is uncharted territory, so let's get busy. It's going to be tight, cramped conditions for me working, so I'm going to try to get a camera in there and really get you guys detailed shots of what I'm doing and what the parts look like and how everything kind of works together as we go. I'll try to explain everything as best I can. So let's get started. All right. So like I said, I've taken off the top end using just Bimble's onboard toolkit. And I'll lay this stuff out and kind of label everything so you can see what I've got in there. It's just a mix of tools that I keep inside the left-hand side saddlebag whenever I ride the bike. So the first thing we got to do is take the sprocket cover off. So this is 8mm screws here. Keep all these together. And some of these screws for the, they call this engine side casing, are of different sizes. So we're going to have to make sure we put them back where they go. So we got the sprocket cover off. Now there is a little, sorry about the noise and the wind. There is a little wire guide. We've got to take that off. I'll keep trying to pick up the camera so you guys can see it. It's this gold piece right here. We've got to take out one screw and take this gold piece out. So that is next. That is just holding the wires that come out of the stator away from the rear sprocket. That's what that little guide does. Now, to get this off, we have to remove the starter gears because one of the screws holding the side cover on is behind the starter gears. So let's pull that off. Let's set those separate. And this little cover has a seal on it, so it's going to be kind of got to work at it to get it off. Okay, that popped off. Now we've got our starter gears, and we want to make sure we capture this spacer right here. If I get my finger on it, there we go. We'll just put that right back on, set that aside. Now we can get to this bolt here, which is holding the side cover on with these other bolts. So we got to take this apart to get to that bolt right there. And these are all 8mm, by the way. So we have that out. We'll set that next to that so we know where everything goes. Oh. Now we can take off the rest of the bolts. There should be 8 in total, I believe. And a couple of these are of different length. So we need to keep an eye on that and keep the wind from blowing everything. God dang. So you can see these two are different lengths. So this one's different. So we just have to make sure it's the right ones where they go. And the wind is still blowing my stuff around. We need this bowl because when I pull this loose, some oil is going to drip out. And shifter's in the way. Piece of debris fell in the bowl. Get rid of that. There's our other long one. So our long one is the bottom right and the not quite top left, but the mid to top left. There's one more right beneath here. There's that one. Now we should be able to pull this off. And there goes our oil I said we need to catch. And I've got something holding up here. There we go. And this won't come free from the bike, so we need to just kind of hang it out of the way somewhere. It's connected to these wires right here. Now I had to go borrow an impact gun because I need to get this flywheel off. So me and Maverick already had a 80-mile adventure this morning. Going to borrow this thing. So we need to pop this thing loose. So we've got that bolt. Set that aside. Now we need a flywheel puller. Okay, so we got a flywheel puller. This is a 22mm. We're just going to feed that into there until it's tightened down. So now we want to feed that in and it will pull the flywheel away. Just just like that. Okay, now we can take this gear off. In theory. Just take them all off. Set that there. Okay. Here's the pin that's holding the cam. It is right there. So what we need to do is pull this screw, then this plate, then we can pull the cam. And that's a 10mm. So we need a different socket. So now this is set at an angle. When we put this back in, we have to make sure we match that. We've got a little spring here. Set that with those. Now we need a pair of pliers to grab a hold of this shaft and pull it out. So hopefully the cameras are working okay. So we're after this shaft right here. We're going to pull this straight out. I'm still using Bimble's onboard kit. I'm trying to use all the tools that are on board the bike. So all we're doing is pulling this shaft straight out, holding the cam in place. Set that there. And we can lift the cam out. So there is the old cam. We're going to replace it with a new one. But we need to move this. Okay. Now there's a rubber seal here in the crank, and we need to get that out so we can see the timing marks. So, Moto called just so happened to have laser cut me a seal puller. Pretty nice of them. These tools cost about 60 bucks to buy one. If you don't have one, you end up having to use a flat tip screwdriver. But they made that and sent it to me. Pretty cool. Alright, so now we can see this gear here. And this is what interacts with the cam gear. And we're looking for a timing mark, which is right there. There's a little circle. I'll try to zoom in so you guys can see it. We need to match that up with a timing mark on the cam itself, and that will ensure that the cam is sitting in the right spot. Okay, so we've got our new cam here, and hopefully you guys can see that circular marker right there. And I'm going to put this in incorrectly because I'm going to show you something. Okay, this is theoretically how this should be installed. But we're actually going to move it over and retard the timing one tooth. So I don't know if you guys will be able to see that, but we are one tooth out backwards. That's how I was instructed to put it in instead of lining the two up. So we're going to do it this way. So the only real difference between my cam and the production version is going to be the laser markings. So I assume the production version is going to have that in the correct spot. Just an assumption. Visually make one more check. Actually, I want to put some oil on this. We're going to smear this with some of the oil that's dripping out of the engine. Just get everything good and lubed here. So we don't want to put things together dry, if at all possible. Now we can put our shaft back in that holds the cam in place, and this should just slide in by hand easily. You shouldn't have to force anything. There we go. We're in the right spot. Okay. Now we need to put that little cover plate back on. And the spring. So put the spring in place there. We'll get this little cover in. There it is. Now I'm not going to tighten anything down with the battery gun because I want to do it by hand, because we're putting steel screws into aluminum. I want to do that by hand and make sure I'm not messing anything up. And that is that. So our little cover plate is back on, and our camshaft, or the shaft that holds the cam, is in the right position. So next we got to put that seal back in here, and I've got a brand new one that we're going to use. Alright, so here's our brand new seal. And the handy dandy little seal installer tool. Use that. At first I'm going to get some oil on this so that it's nice and lubed up. Set that there. Slide this on. And push the seal into place. So there is our seal back in place. Now we can start buttoning all this back up. And our side cover seal looks pretty good. I'm just going to wipe it off, and we're going to reuse it. I did order some new ones just in case I tore this, but I didn't, so we're going to keep these. Just give everything a good wipe down. So we've got to make sure we don't pinch this wire. We'll put all this back together. So first we need this back in. Might have to pull these gears out. Alright, so that's in place. Next up is the flywheel. It's got a Woodruff key, so we're looking for this notch to that. And then our bolt. Then we need the impact wrench one last time. But we need to change back to 14 millimeter. There's that. Okay, so now this can go back on, and this is magnetic, so be careful that it doesn't snatch it out of your hands while you're lining everything up. That looks pretty good. So we'll get a few bolts in here. Probably this one is the one we're going to put back in here. Like I said, I'm not going to crank this down. Just running it in. That's all I'm doing there. Okay, so we need one of our long bolts to go in here. And the other long bolt goes down here. Alright, so our side cover bolts are back in. And like I said, I didn't crank those down, just good and slightly more than snug. Because all we need to do is just hold the oil inside there with those. So, good wipe down. Alright, now we've got to put starter gears back in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this from the cover. That's kind of a spring loaded there. It's going to hold that. So what we want to do is feed this in and get these gears to drop into place. Bang, first try, look at that. Alright, so those are in. Now we got to put the cover on, and the cover is not symmetrical. So we got to look at the holes and see how they line up. I just dropped the shim. Go back on there. Try it this way. Alright, that looks good. Now we can just pop this in. Remember, there's a gasket there. It's going to hold that. Now we can put these screws in. Start those by hand. There, we'll just run these in. And hopefully the camera is picking this up, because I have no idea what you guys are looking at. Like I said, I'm working in kind of a confined space, and I cannot see what the camera is actually aimed at. So hopefully this is working out okay. Now we can put the sprocket cover back on, but I've got to take one of these bolts back out before I do that. This bolt needs to be loose. That's the one just under the wires. That is to facilitate the installation of this. But before we do that, we've got to put this wire cover back on. Make sure our wires are up out of the way. So that is in. So there's our wire cover back in there, holding the wires away from the rear sprocket, the front sprocket. Now this is going in. Get a bolt in that for now. All right, so we had to back that one out because this kind of slides underneath it. Then for this one, it's kind of far back in there, so we're going to reach in there with our extension. Get that going. And that one tightened. I'll just run these in with the gun. Come here, Greg. And we'll tighten these by hand. Alright, that is the cam installed. And side cover reinstalled. So there's our cam gear. Like I said, you got to take the top end off to get to that. Then you have to take all this off to get to that as well. Now we're going to the top end of the bike and get that all reinstalled. Alright, so we're switching to an overhead view over my shoulder here. That's what we got to do now is set up the piston. And we need to install the rings. And I'm going to grab some oil real fast. So I want to keep some oil handy so I can lubricate things as we put them together. So I'm just going to take a few drops. And lube up the piston. Put down a little better there. They've got like assembly grease and things like that that you can use. I'm just using gear oil. Is what I've got going on. Alright, so when we look at our pistons, we've got our oil ring, our two oil seal rings. This is the number 2 ring, and this is the top ring. And the way to tell is the top ring will have, mine's got 3 letters on it, and it's got a beveled internal edge. So we want that facing up. Second ring should have 1 letter on it. We want that facing up. And the oil ring and oil seal rings don't matter. So we don't have to worry about those facing up or anything like that. So we are going to put our oil ring in, move that around, get it good and lubed. Then we can go to the oil seal rings. So we want to get one on top and one on bottom, above and below that oil seal ring, or that oil ring. So I'm going to feed one end into place, and then start walking it around. Just keep feeding it into position until it goes. Just work our way around and feed that ring into position. There we go. Now there'll be a slight gap, and that's okay. And we'll do the same with the bottom one. And we'll just start walking it around, feeding it into position. There we go. So hopefully that shot came out okay and you guys can see that. So now we need our number 2 ring. Like I said, letter up. And we're going to put that into its groove. And as the rings go up, they get stiffer. So be prepared for that. Get that in there. just start walking it around. Now it is in place. Now the top ring, do the same thing. One end started in the groove. Just walk it around and feed it into position. And voila, got all our piston rings in place. Now, you can see the inputs, or the inlet side, or intake side of the piston is there. So we're going to position these rings. So the top ring, the gap is at 12 o'clock. We'll move the second ring till it is at the 6 o'clock position here by the exhaust. And then the oil rings, we're going to move those to where one of them is at 4 o'clock and the other one is at 8 o'clock. There we go. Now we need this. This is the wrist pin. I'm probably going to have to go get something to open this with. Nope, there we go. Get my oily hands all over it. I can slide a little more of this on there. That all nice and lubed up. And that will go in, and we need some clips. And whoever made these little G clips for the wrist pin should win the Nobel Prize. These are a hell of a lot easier to use than the old C clips. Those things are a pain. Alright, so we need to a pair of needle nose pliers, and we're going to put this on this side. So we've got our intake here, our exhaust here. We're going to put one of these G clips on the far side. Using our needle nose. That looks pretty good. We'll turn it so that the gap in the clip is not coinciding with that little indentation right there. So hopefully that'll give you a close-up. Hopefully the camera will focus on that. So what that's going to allow us to do is slide the wrist pin in over the connecting rod, or through the connecting rod, like so. Then once this is all installed, we'll install that final G-clip and lock the piston in place. So let's move over and do that. Alright, so here is our connecting rod, and we've got a shop rag kind of covering this hole so nothing falls down into the bottom end of the engine. And I've put some more of that oil inside the connecting rod. So we want to put the piston on. Look through, line everything up. There we go. So now the wrist pin is in place, pressed against the G-clip on the other side. Now we need to get another G-clip and install it on this side. So these are much easier to work with than the old C-clip styles. Okay. And I'm going to have to get in the way here so I can get a visual inspection going. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to rotate that clip so that it does not coincide with this little indentation here. So the gap is like over here. So now the piston's in place. Okay, we're back to our little work table here. And before we install the piston, we have to remove the lifters and transfer them from the old piston to the new piston. So this is something you'll have to do if you buy this kit and install it. I don't have to because my piston and everything's actually pretty good. My cylinder's good. But for demonstration purposes, we're going to do the swap. Just so you guys can see that. And I might have to go get a screwdriver. Maybe not. Alright, so we're back into Bimble's kit again. And there's a little shelf inside here. Well, it just started falling out. So I probably won't even need it. So I can get a hold of that actually without the screwdriver. There's a little shoulder on this shaft right here. You just wanted to take a screwdriver or something and push it out. But like I said, it just kind of fell out. So we're going with it. So we just need to work this out while holding on to our lifters. Just work it out. So there is our inboard lifter. And I keep these facing the direction that they were in the engine. So our lifters will go on in that configuration right there. Now there's a spring washer inside here that we need. Right there's a little wavy washer. We need to install that into the new cylinder. Set this back out of the way. Get the new one out. Let's give this a little wipe. Get any crud off of it. Alright. So we need to install this back in here. And you can grease this if you would like, just to hold it in place. If it falls out, it won't stay in place. You can put a little bit of grease on the back of it and stick it in place. Alright, so now this shaft has a hole in it with some threads. We need that facing vertically. Alright, so we need the holes. There's 2 aligning marks. You want those vertical. And I didn't know this ahead of time, but my engine has upgraded lifters in it. Something I wasn't aware of. So we're just going to repeat the process we had a second ago. Actually, I'm going to lubricate this first. Should put some oil in where the shaft is going to go. Get that good and lubed, and my little washer fell out. Let's see if we can get that stuck back in there. Alright, let's go ahead and put a dab of grease on that to hold it in place, because that's wanting to fall out. Okay, so we got us some grease, and we're just going to smear it on the back side of this thing, on the high spots. And we're going to fit it in there. Just like that. So there's our little wave washer stuck in there with some grease in that little recess. Now start sliding these in. This one. I apologize for the wind. I wish this wasn't such a windy day. The shaft is a little tight in the new cylinder. Okay. So everything has slid into place. we can move those around. Come on, wind. We can move this still, but we're going to need it free for now. And then we'll align it before we lock everything down. We're looking at the cylinder upside down. I should have shown... You can't see it from this side. I should have shown the cups on these. That's where your push rods are going to go. So I've got two. So your push rods sit down in those little cups. And we're going to have to seat those here in a little while. So now we can put the cylinder on. Alright, so with hindsight being 2020, I probably should have installed this gasket before the piston. So we're going to go ahead and lower this down. This is a one-way fit. Just look for that little key that goes to the corresponding little keyhole in the base. Hopefully this just slides down over everything. There we go. Okay. Now we can start installing the piston. But we got to look for our little keepers. Yes. There's some little keepers on these studs. So we're looking for these. Should be two of them. There's one on both of those sides. And they can be pretty much anywhere, really. So now we get to have some fun. So I'm going to have to lower the cylinder on, and I'm going to be crawling around both sides of this bike, trying to get these piston rings to stay in place while the piston is lowered into position. So let's go ahead and line these up again. So I'm just going to take my needle nose pliers that have the rubber handle on them. Just lay that right there. Then we'll lower the piston onto the pliers. Alright, so that should hold the piston in place. Well, we slide this down. So we've got to get our top ring back in. They sell actual tools to do these rings. I just don't happen to have one. Alright, that should do that. I said this is the most tedious part right here. Okay. Now we can start the second ring. Look what fell out. We gotta take that back off. Damn it. And we gotta reinstall this little wave washer, start all over. Alright. So we got our lifters and our little spring wave washer put back into place. I just needed a little more grease on it, I guess. And shit, it's gotten real. I've taken off my hoodie. So now we've got to finish lowering the piston into place. Whew. Alright, so we've got her in place. Now, we need to turn these, get these vertical again. Because there's a bolt that's going to have to drop down in here. Lock that into place. So, there's two 10mm bolts that go here and here. I'm going to put those in and just snug them. I'm not going to tighten it down. Okay, so we've got our two little 10mm. I'll put those in there. We're just going to hand tighten these. We're not going to crank them down or anything like that. Probably should have used a socket. Make this go a little easier. So we're just wanting to hold the cylinder down, not lock it down, because we want to do that with these. So doing this, just make sure nothing's going to move. Like that. And now we can move the cylinder up and down and see if anything feels like it's snagging. And that all feels good. So now we can move on to, let's leave those off for now. Now we can put the head on. Alright, at least for this part I get to sit down again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the head gasket first thing. And I need to go find some locating dowels. Okay, we got our locating dowels. Let's see where they're going to go. So one's for sure going to go there. And one like that. And install our head gasket. That's better. So now we need to move the intake side, obviously, to the rear. And we need to feed this in this bracket, because there's a bolt going to go through there. I should get out of my chair and do this from below, but I'm not going to. That's how that goes in. Now we got to put in our head bolts. First one's going to go down in this hole, and we're just going to get it started. Next one over here. Let's put the third one here. And the last one in the back. And you don't have to do it in the order that I'm doing it in. It's just do a kind of a crisscross, especially when you go to torque them down, which means I have to go back inside and get a torque wrench. But first, we're going to put one more bolt in and just snug it up. We're not going to tighten it down either. So we got to move to the other side again. And I will be glad when I can get off my knees for good on this god. Alright, so this bolt goes in here, feeds down into our lifter shaft here. That's why I said these have to be vertically as the Harley goes by, because this bolt is going to hold that into place. So we're not cranking this yet. I want to do the head bolts first before I crank these down. So we're just putting this in to hold everything in place. That's all we're doing there. Now let's get a torque wrench. Okay, so we got us a torque wrench, and we want to tighten these down to 25 foot-pounds of torque. So I'm just going to snug them down first until I start feeling some resistance, then I'll move on. Another one. I need a deep well for this. So I'm just going to have to keep moving back and forth. Because I don't have a deep well to reach all the way across. So now that the head is torqued, I'm coming back around to these 3 bolts, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten those down. Like I said, you're screwing these into aluminum, so you don't want to crank them down. Just good and snug, so they're not going to come loose. Those 2 are 10 millimeters. This one up here is a 12. That should do it. Alright, so now is a critical fun part. We have to put the push rods into the cups of those lifters. So I'm using a magnet to hold on to it, just in case I drop it, if I don't have it in the right position. And you just got to feel around. You can't see down in there. When you think you got it, start lifting it up. Nope, that's not it. I think I got this one. So I'm just raising it up a little bit and giving it resistance that way, this way, that way, and that way to see if I can feel that it's in that cup, and that one feels like it's in the right spot. So let's just set that one aside. Hope it doesn't come loose and fall out while we try to insert this one. Alright, so that one's in. So now we have to be careful we do not knock those loose. So now we have to install a spacer, because the engine is actually lower than the stock engine. So we need a spacer in there for the rocker arms so that they sit at the original height. So we got to get those in, then put the rockers on, seat these into the cups, and then hold pressure on those until we get some bolts in. Here we go again. Alright, so here is our spacer. It says Moto Colt on it, so we know who made it. And this is going to slip right there. Stay. A little glob of grease probably would have helped there. So now we have our rocker arms. So we need to get these in place with the push rods beneath it. Just like that. And I've got to hold them down. So now I need to move the spacer a little bit and get it bolt started. And I'm just going to wrench this down hand tight. Still keep some pressure on that. And drop in another bolt. Run that down. Just hand tight once again. Sorry you can't see this. My hands are in the way, but I can't move them because I'm holding pressure on the push rods. So now I'm gonna screw down these just a little bit just to hold everything. I just want a little play in it. There's that one. I don't want to torque this down with pressure on these. So I've just got them screwed down enough that the push rods cannot fall out of the cups. And we'll get this third bolt in. Now we can take a little more pressure off these. We want some wiggle room there. We don't want these tight while we are torquing things down. So we want a little play in each one of those. Now let's torque them down. All right, this time we want 20 feet-pounds. So let's recalibrate our torque wrench here. Set that for 20. Start working these down. There's that one. That one. The third one. Okay. So everything is installed. I got to gap the spark plug, put it in. I'm going to leave this off because we're going to do a service on the bike and set the gaps and change the oil. So now I've got to work on, I got to install the carburetor, install the exhaust. Then we'll wheel it out onto the sidewalk and do an official oil change on the bike. All right, one more step. We forgot to install this bolt here. Got to do that before we put the carb on. This is an oddball sized bolt too because it's a 13 millimeter. So we've got a nut that goes on the other side. All right, so now that that's in place, we can get to the carburetor. Got our insulator. I've got 2 gaskets. I'm going to install these. Just like so. Slip the boot onto the airbox. Viola. Alright, so now we need the upper bolt. We need to line up all these holes, the gaskets and the insulator. And then once we get that done, Robert will be your mother's brother. Alright, so now we need a 10 millimeter, and we'll have to go back and forth and tighten this bolt down and the corresponding bolt on the other side. Once we get this side snug, we'll just move around to the other side and do that one. Okay, so we're back to the other side. Alright, so this side is good. Let's go finish off the other side. There's that. Now we need a screwdriver. Tighten up that. I guess you could say I'm a little bit fearless when it comes to doing stuff like this. Like I said, I've never done this before. Just learn as I go. And now our carburetor is in. Alright, we're getting down to it now. So it's time to install the exhaust header. I've got a exhaust gasket and I just put a little grease on the back side of it just to hold hold it in place while we're farting around. That'll just burn off. So now we get to install the header. There's that. Got a washer and 2 nuts. Alright, this is as low as my tripod will go, but now it is time to drain all the oil. So we need a 17mm wrench. Break that loose. Is this ready? That. All right, so now we're going to set the gaps in the tappets. So we've got those just a little loose, got some wiggle room there, and we want 4 1/1000ths. That's what we're looking for. I've got the 4 and 5 out so I can get this one close and then try to stick this one in there. Now, I don't want this one to go, but I want this one to go. So I'm just going to crank it down by hand. Now I've got my Janus tool. One end of this is 3mm, the other is 4mm. So the 3mm is for the 250, the 4mm is for the 450. And this is just trial and error. Just take your time, do it right. So good there. And 5 won't go. So intake valve is set. Now we got to do exhaust. So I'm just going to put the 4 in there and tighten it down by hand. Just to get it ballpark. Alright, there we go. So now the valves are set. Still got oil draining out of the engine. I'm going to put the valve cover on. Alright, we are getting close to magic time. Time to put the spark plug in. And the kit came with a brand new spark plug, so we'll use it. Throw that in place. And then the spark plug tool. Alright. So now the valve cover, this has actually been sitting off to the side curing the whole time we've been working. So I took a toothpick and some black RVT and carefully coated the bottom of this channel with the black RVT. I cleaned it really well, then coated the bottom with black RVT, so none squeezing out. I didn't use enough that there'd be RVT squeezing out of it. And then I placed gasket in, and it has been sitting on a paper towel over there just like this under its own weight, curing the entire time it's been working on the bottom. So now I should have no problem slipping this into place, fighting the gasket. Now got 3 10mm. I'm really surprised it doesn't have 4. I'm kind of surprised to see it have 3. This one goes on the other side. Now we can attach our spark plug lead. And we need to install our oil lines. For those, we need a Phillips screwdriver. Okay, so all we have left to do now is fill the engine with oil, kick it over, see what happens. Cross your fingers. Spin it there. Don't be careless. All right, moment of truth. This starts. Joe Boo owes me a 6-pack. Hold on to your butts.